podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. It's almost afternoon, but it's good.
True.
We have some guests with us today. We have actually my parents. So
Yay.
Mary and Louie, who are joining us from Winnipeg, which is great. It's a little bit earlier there than it is here.
It's
Right?
true. 1 hour.
It's okay, good time. 10
Yeah, 1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah, 1 hour.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
That's not
Also,
too bad.
I like to emphasize that there's already snow in Winnipeg, and there has been for like a week.
wow.
Which I guess when we're airing this episode, that's not going to be as big a deal. But it's still October right now, so
Right. That's
Yeah.
true. Yep, that's exactly. It's the last day of October.
It
That's
is.
right. I saw pictures from somebody in Alberta, and they've got a lot of snow in Alberta.
Nice.
Do you guys have like a dusting in Winnipeg, or is it like?
We had
A
a
lot.
little more, eh?
Well, it's in two bouts it came, and I would call them both. I'll call it better than a dusting, but
Okay.
a few centimeters. But
Okay.
it's a little bit warmer today, and it looks like a
Okay.
dusting today.
Well,
So it's
you
on
would
its
know
way down.
about it.
Yeah,
You would
that's
know
right.
all about. So Louis
Yeah.
is a meteorologist.
Right. That's
Oh,
why I live in
wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. So
ask
in
me a weather-
addition, yeah, and I'm just gonna say, in addition to the podcast today, we'll also be doing a 14-day,
Yeah.
which will be
Out-
irrelevant when
outlook.
we air this anyways because of the
Yeah.
disaster predictions. But then we'll be
It's a
able to
helpful
judge whether or
profession.
not how good you are.
That's so good. That's so cool.
Yeah, I better get it right then.
yeah.
That's
Well,
true.
and we don't even know where are you forecasting for it? Are we just like the Canada in
Right.
general? We're kind of all over the place right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll
That's
do
true.
Winnipeg, and then no one will know if I'm right or wrong. So
Right, exactly. You could just say snow, and then you're pretty much guaranteed to be right.
Yeah.
getting colder.
Yeah.
right.
There
Yeah.
you go.
we had a dusting in Hamilton yesterday. It's all melted
you?
now. But yeah, I woke up and I was like, it snowed. And then
Aw.
it's all gone now. But
I'm kind of excited for that though. Like the first snow of the year, I
Yeah.
find is so magical.
It
Even
is
the
magical.
first few, it's like so romantic and lovely
Yeah.
and nice. And then it's like even after Christmas. I'm okay
Yeah,
till
it's after Christmas. That's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it starts
Well-
being like,
Then it's
okay,
like,
now
get
it's
out of
brown.
here. Yeah.
We had a workman come into our house yesterday, and he's from Australia. And we asked, he's only been here a couple years, and we asked him, "Well, gee, what's it like? The impact of living in Winnipeg. It's so cold in the winters." And we're expecting him to say something kind of challenging,
Negative, yeah.
but he's like, "It's wonderful. It's so,
Aw.
it's such a novelty." It was like, "Oh, this is so refreshing to hear."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so
true.
true.
Yeah, I
feel like I
a
have-
friend from Australia too who does the same thing. She's
like,
lovely.
loves snow.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like
I
I
was
have like a
gonna
love-hate relationship with it. Like I left Winnipeg for grad school to Toronto. I was excited for grad school, and I was also excited for less winter because I feel like that's the thing of just like in Winnipeg you have maybe set like six to 7 months where there'll be snow on the ground. October, and it can last into May even. Something like that.
But we
And
have
it's just a
sun.
long time.
It's
6
a long
months.
time.
We
Mhm.
get sun at least, but
Yeah,
that's
usually
true.
in the
Yeah,
worst
that's
months
true.
it's really bright and sunny, so that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Very cold. Though.
Yeah.
Very good.
Louis and Mary, can I tell you a story? The girls already know it because I told them that yesterday, but I figured this is funny, so it'll be good to share. So yesterday I moved from Toronto to Ottawa, and I had all my stuff packed. My dad had come down with their car to bring some more stuff. Anyway, so I sent him off in the morning. Everything's with him. All the other stuff is packed in my car. I go downstairs to make the lovely coffee that I have made for myself so that I can drink my coffee and have morning prayer. And I just tapped it, and it fell right off the counter in this epic splash, like all over into the next room. And I couldn't make any more because I had sent the rest of my coffee off with my dad, and I spilled it up half of my sleeve, and all my stuff was packed under the car. So I couldn't. So then I had these bed sheets that I was throwing out because they had holes in them. So I just used those to mop up the coffee, but then I went upstairs to put a stuff in the garbage. And then I tried to put the bed sheets in the garbage can, and I realized that it looked like somebody had wet the bed, and it was just these bed sheets. Then I tried to rearrange them so you couldn't tell that they were like wet the bed sheets, except then I realized that it is a clear garbage bag, so it doesn't matter
Oh,
anyways. All my efforts were futile. So
Oh man.
Grand arrival.
yeah,
Grand departure, yeah.
Yeah,
Good morning.
That's
I
right.
know.
I would have
That's
loved to see a little movie of that. It'd be great.
That's what I said. It would make
Yeah.
a good sitcom, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
somehow my clumsiness is not just normal clumsiness, it's
No.
like good clumsiness, you know?
Do it
Special
on a grand
It's very
scale.
special.
Do it
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
That's awesome.
Well, so our topic today is, and I was gonna do like a segue about waiting for winter to end, but then Erin, that story is epic, so this is good. But the pain of waiting, you know, and it can be is what we're talking about today. And so let's dive in. We asked my Louis and Mary, my parents, to be here because they've experienced this in their lives in the past several years. So maybe we'll just start off with that. Is okay. What is the story? Why are you such experts on the topic of why waiting is painful?
Yeah, well, so it turned out in 2014, I had a sudden intestinal blockage. And I think it came because I had been on double iron because my hemoglobin was quite low. And I think my body just slowed right down. And so I don't think it was the best thing to have been on. But anyway, ended up with this blockage. Went into the hospital in 2014, February. And when I was released, they couldn't quite hear all the sounds that were associated with your intestines moving again. But they just said, well, it's a little bit. So they sent me home. But it turned out I ended up in severe pain. About a week after I got home, the pain just, I guess, as I began to try to eat more, such severe pain. I've never experienced such severe pain. And it lasted, it was just all the time, actually, except when I slept. And I began to lose weight. And, within about 2 months, I had lost 25 to 30 pounds. And I was only about 130 to start with. So anyway, went back to the doctors, and I was back in hospital 2 times that year to search for an answer, and they did a huge battery of tests, but they couldn't find anything, and I just continued to lose weight, but I kept being sent home from the hospital. So I was in June again. That year for about 3 weeks, all the tests, sent back home. By August, was back in because my weight continued to fall. And they tried putting me on a nose tube, and nothing was working. I had still a lot of pain. And in December, I ended up having another surgery for a removal of my thyroid gland. So during all the tests, they found other things. So anyway, gradually, a year went by. The pain was mediocre. I actually gained a little weight after my thyroid thing, but I was always sick feeling. And then 2 years later, I began to again lose weight so severely that I was admitted again into hospital. I was probably at what at the time was the lowest point, and ended up on leaving the hospital and being on it's an intravenous type of nutrition called TPN. So it's fed right into your bloodstream. And they were trying to give me all the nutrition that I was losing in my body. So for about a year, so I was sent back home, and for about a year, I was on this TPN. Louis was my nurse. He took the training to administer it to me intravenously out throughout the night.
Because you couldn't really eat during this time, right? You had about a year where you weren't.
That
very
time
minimally.
I could eat. and just small amounts, but gradually, my stomach started to become really distended, and I looked like I was 6 months pregnant, and I was like 52 at the time, 53 or 54, and it was really hard, and by that point, so in December of about 2.5 years later, I couldn't eat anything, and all I could eat was broth and yogurt, and I was on this nutrition to keep me alive. And again, I was going downhill, and ended up, so a whole bunch of spiritual things happened, so I can share those in a minute. But so anyway, ended up back in February or March of 2017, exploring surgery. They opened me up and found that my intestines were all matted together with scar tissue, and they took out like quite a number, most of my intestine. They said they left me enough to get nutrition, they hoped, and it was. But anyway, I had an ileostomy for a year, so my bowels needed to heal, and I had that, which was kind of a shock when I woke up from surgery. But I had no more pain, and I could start eating again, which I was terrified to do because I was always in pain. But when I slowly introduced food into my diet again, it was like amazing. I didn't have any pain. And gradually over that year, I was able to eat more and more. And they took me off TPN too, just right in the hospital. So I was only on food. I was so afraid I was going to go downhill again, but my body responded. And by a year later, in 2018, they went in again, opened me up, and rejoined my intestines, and everything like came back together. Like everything worked properly, and it still is. And I was able to eat, gain my weight back, no more pain anymore, and it was like absolutely amazing to feel new life, like a sense of freedom, and just coming out of the trenches into this wonderful life again. And it took me a lot. There was a whole healing process that came along with all of that I can describe too. But that's the story in a nutshell, was this journey into experiencing, where the biggest experience was that I didn't know who was going to help me. I didn't know, none of the doctors for a long time didn't know what to do. I had continued to be sent home. My family doctor didn't know what to do. I felt hopeless in a sense for my health. And the only thing I could do was cling to Jesus. Louis and I prayed every day, and I had my own prayer times. And he continued to say, trust in me. Trust in my timing and in my way of healing. And he gave me many words of assurance. And it's true. And he did. He brought me through in his own way, his own time, into healing. And so it was a journey. There's so much I can share about spiritually, how the Lord brought me through this. But that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the story.
It's so beautiful. Like, just for anybody who's listening, who didn't listen to our intro episode, I used to live in Winnipeg for a while. So that was how I met Nicole. And then that is how I met you, Mary and Louis. And you were my spiritual directors for a little while and stuff like that. But I just remember like leaving Winnipeg and Nicole kind of giving the updates about how you were doing and like praying for you. But this is the first time that I've heard everything from, start to finish. And it's just like, oh my goodness, that's so much. Like it's so much, so it's like, I'm so glad to be looking at you right now and seeing you on the other side of it.
I know.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was the biggest, deepest, most powerful spiritual lesson I've learned in my life. And first of all, I had an amazing husband who walked with me through this. And and all my children too. When I was in the hospital so many times for such a long time, they were always making time to visit me. Louis came every day pretty much, and I felt like I was surrounded by so much love all the time. Whereas I saw so many people in the hospital who they just didn't have many people to come to them, you know.
Yeah.
And I should let Louis talk because he's experiencing something.
Yeah.
I think we all, I was like, I just met you guys. I'm like, and you know, I mean, it's like, I think we're all kind of like a bit emotional because I think it's so honest and real. And it's something that experience of what you said of being hopeless and not really having an answer and not knowing that you're going to get an answer, you know, like it's not like you were like, okay, well, when we do these things, then we'll know. It's like you didn't even know if that was going to happen. And I feel like in different ways, so many of us have seasons like that in our lives, and it's so hard, but it's so beautiful to hear, just to hear the honesty of that time for you, but also what sustained you. And you know, so I'm so grateful. Like I was like, I just met you guys and I'm like, I'm crying. I don't know.
And like
we're
all
all
of us
crying.
Yeah, for those who are listening, as opposed to if you see the YouTube version of this, we're all just being copious tears.
We're all just crying.
Go ahead. Did you want to say that?
Yeah, Louis.
Oh, well, I mean, with respect to what Mary just shared, it was. I recall, of course, I was afraid that I'd lose. Sorry.
It kind of brings it all back.
Totally.
You know, go through it again, it brings it back.
I was afraid of that, but I had to be strong because Mary would just wonder, where's God, or why is this taking so long, or where's the answers, how come we can't get help? And I had to live in hope, for her and my children.
I think that was something too. During this time, we were all afraid. We were all afraid. I didn't know what would happen. And it was this. I think we all had to learn that there's to be, because I think we're everyone in my family, praise God, is living, it has a person of prayer and and faith and all these things. But when you're going through something really difficult, the fear is real, and the experiences of hopelessness and despair, like I don't think you can escape that, because that's just a human thing, And we all and yet we all kind of had to be honest with that, and yet try to help, support each other, and to learn how to do that, and it wasn't, I don't think it was easy. I had to learn how to still express how I was feeling and the difficult stuff, even when I felt like I had to be strong, and to know when are the times that, okay, this is where I can to speak things of hope, so I can be hopeful if the other person isn't feeling hopeful, or when do I need to receive that, so kind of
the Lord is bringing you somewhere, like He's always working, and if you invite Him, He's moving you forward, and that's true too, but you don't know where it's going in the flesh, right? And
right.
So while I live in the hope of the Lord, you don't know in this world where is it going, and there's no options. You have to accept and trust the Lord.
Like when I pray at different times, I kept a journal of when I had my surgery. One of my kids gave me a little journal book. And they said, just write down whatever words you want to say. And so I started, whatever words you sense Jesus saying. So I began, and those words, I began to be more in tune with His voice, and began to write down, and was able to detect it better and better, the voice of Jesus. And I've gone back, looking at them, and it's just so beautiful to see with how He spoke. And one of the things He said was, He gave me a vision one day, an image one day of that I was on a train, and this train was going around like a forest, and then it was going across a field and around a lake, and it's like I sensed him say that he just wanted me to be on the train. Just, I'm on a journey. Just sit and be on this journey, and let him take me where he needs to take me. And that came back a couple of times, that I was still on the train, but that he was taking me somewhere, and those moments helped to assure me that there was something in all of this. And even right from the beginning, like one night I was in really terrible pain, and I was praying my rosary because I couldn't sleep there very much. I'd walk around the living room and I was praying my rosary, and I felt like Mary said, like, trust in the goodness of God. And she seemed so excited the way she said it, and it struck me because I thought, how can Mother Mary be so excited when I'm suffering so much, you know?
Hey, that's
Rude. Yeah.
That's so rude.
But I pondered it, and what I started sensing was Mary was aware that God was doing something very good, and she just wanted me to trust in his goodness in this whole thing. And that was like a turning point, like a grace came with it. A grace came with those words. And I gradually began learning how to trust more and more in the Lord. And like, it was like so many times there was no hope. There was no way I'd be sent home, or the doctor didn't seem to care or know. And I come back home and I'm just keep being in pain, keep losing weight. And, but the image I had was like a free fall, falling backwards, falling back into the arms of God, into the arms of Jesus, to be so trusting that if he wants me to die, then he'll take me to heaven, and that'll be his will. And if he wants me to be alive, he'll find a way. Yeah. And it was this lesson for both of us of trust became the key.
Trusting God.
Yeah. Trust. And I asked him one day, Jesus, like, what do you want? What do you mean trust exactly? What do you mean? And he said, trust that I love you, trust that I will never abandon you, and trust that I am working for your best interests. And those three things became like the goal of where I was going. I had to trust him and allow him to do what he was going to do in whatever way he was going to do it.
It was the same for me. I recall one day that we were sitting in the living room, and we were praying, I think, together. But anyway, and it was very clear what came to me. It was I would say it was like kind of the lowest that I got, but then the highest, in that I sensed the Lord saying, you have to entrust her to me even unto death. Trust me. And I knew that was the truth. Like, we sort of grasp at life. Yeah. But we have to trust him to the very end. Because if Mary died, I'm still with the Lord, and I have to carry on, and the Lord will pick me up, But he wanted me to go there in my heart and mind and give Mary to him.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I think it reminds me, I was actually, I don't even know why, it's not even the day in the breviary, but I was like looking ahead at the second reading, I think, for All Souls Day, maybe, or anyways, one of the days that's coming up. But it's where St. Ambrose talks about that death is actually a remedy. Like, we see death as, this something that's scary and final and all of these kind of things, but it really is a remedy for the situation of sin, because God in his mercy gave death so we would not have to live for all of eternity in sin, in this broken condition of ours, which I was like, but man, it sounds like he was giving you like an experience almost of some element of that in that,
I think it's, go ahead.
Well, I was just remembering something that you say, Mom, whenever you're having, sometimes you'd be having a rough day, or you'd be, I don't know if I've heard you say this different times, you'd just be like, I was made for heaven. I wasn't made for
I know. We have a friend who always teases me about that, and he says, "When you die, we're going to write on your epitaph, on your tombstone, I was made for heaven." But
so great. That's so good.
But you know, like, it taught me that suffering, like, I used to see suffering as being bad. You know, it's the enemy.
Yeah.
And I think I tried to avoid it in my life. I think there was a lot of fear working in me, in my life, that I didn't even really realize. After going through this, the Lord has really freed me in so many ways. But I think what I learned was, like, suffering, there's value in it. Because we're broken, God uses the suffering to bring something so beautiful out of who we are. Because I can say now, like, I learned who Jesus really was in a deeper way. I realized he is very trustworthy. And my love for my husband, it grew deeper too. And just knowing the love of my family, my children, like, I was so deeply touched by that. And also I think I've become more able to understand, be more compassionate to other people. And and my prayer life has deepened. My relationship with Jesus has just deepened so much from this experience. And I don't think anything else could have brought me where I am now except through suffering. And I don't think, it's not like God wants us to suffer, but he knows it's going to happen because we're living in this broken world. Yeah, he permits it. And makes good out of it. He meets us in the suffering. And he says, don't you worry, I am going to do something so good. If you trust me, if you can relax and be in my presence, I will take this and I will do something amazing with it. And he really did. And I have so much to say.
Oh, it's so good.
No, it's like gold. I love it.
It's good.
Yeah.
I have a specific. Oh, sorry, Erin. Do you want to say?
Well, I just have a question. Do you want to ask your question first?
Just go for it. If you have one, I was just gonna. Yeah.
It kind of tags off of what you were saying, anyways. But I know, like, for me, even in some of the medical things that I've experienced, like waiting for a diagnosis for endometriosis, I had like pain for 2 years before there was a diagnosis. There was like, and it almost drove me crazy because, like, it was really hard. And I was even thinking about that this morning because all the moving stuff, like, I'm sore today, you know, but I know why. Like, I know what it is. So then it's so much less distressing than if I was like, I'm sore today and I have no idea what's wrong and I don't know what's happening and da-da-da. But I'm wondering, like, for you, how you navigated that, like the not knowing, especially even in that, like with being authentic in front of the Lord with how you were feeling in any, you know, feelings and stuff like that, but also with finding hope. Like, how did you find that? What did you tell yourself in those times? Yeah,
I think, you know, when you suffer, it helps you to detach from all the things that used to be important, and you're left with yourself. You're left with the very core of, you face your fears, and you face, you know, your mortality, and your humanity. And so if we can bring that to the Lord, if we come to the Lord in that, the sort of the purest interior sense of who we are, and then he begins to speak to us. Because usually if we suffer, we're often also in a place where I think if we're willing to listen, we will hear the Lord speak, because so much of the distraction is removed because you don't have the energy and the strength to deal with the chatter of the world, you know? And so I found it was easier for me to listen. And, you know, like one day I was worrying, and this is just kind of at my very lowest point. In 2016, before I went on to this TPN nutrition, but I said to the Lord, you know, Lord, I'm really worried. My daughter was going to get married, Cecile, in Ottawa, and I really wanted to be at the wedding in June, and I was just like, you know, 91 pounds or 92 pounds or something low, and And I was like in the hospital, but he said to me, "Remind me who I am."
Oh.
Wow.
And I'll
That's
think to
snarky.
yourself, what would you say to Jesus? So I began to think, and I said, well, you're the God of the impossible. You see that in scripture. Like you walked on water, you walked through walls in the resurrection, after the resurrection. You make all things new. I said all these things that I knew from my faith, and I felt like he was smiling, and he said, "That's right."
Correct.
I feel like that's the closest thing I've ever heard to like basically God being like, "Dare me."
That's it, And so what does that leave you with? It leaves you with on your knees and you say, "Yes, Lord, I submit. Whatever is your will." And like another thing was in 2017, so just before the life-changing first surgery, I was had come back. I was only hardly eating anything, and anyway, I found out my doctor sent me a note and says, I'm setting you up with a surgeon. And it's like, what? Like no one told me. I'm just all of a sudden I'm going to be having
Mary,
surgery.
You know what? A reminder though.
Well, I didn't tell that story.
You will. I won't tell your story.
Okay.
But before this story takes place, you said to your regular doctor.
Okay.
That's important.
Okay. I did. I wrote my gastrointestinal doctor an email, and I said, this was like November, and I said, "I'm not thriving." I said, "I'm only surviving." I said, is there anything you can do?
Yeah.
So a month went by, I didn't hear from him, and all of a sudden I get this note back saying, "You'll be seeing the surgeon on February, whatever." So I didn't know what was up. I didn't really think of it was going to be a life-changing surgery. And, anyway, so I was out trying to get some exercise. I thought, if I'm going to have surgery, I should get my heart in shape. And so with my little energy, I was trying to, do a bit of cross-country skiing or cross-country walking, whatever you'd call it. I was slow. Anyway, I said to the Lord, I am, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I'm at my limit. And I had been offering up all my suffering. Honestly, like this is what my faith taught me. Offer up your suffering. So it was a beautiful, I felt like I had a mission all along. Offer all of my suffering. I offered it for my children, for their spiritual life. I offered it for whatever the Lord wanted, any souls. So anyway, I'm at a point where I said, I feel like I'm at my limit. And then he said to me, I'm just gonna see if I write this. Yeah, he said, I said, "When will this be over?" And he said, "When it holds." And I said, I thought about that. I go, "What do you mean when it holds?" Like I didn't clue in. And then an image came to my mind of two pieces of paper that are bonded together after you glue. And you have to hold them until they bond. And then you can let go and it stays. Because if you let go too soon, they start to curl up and come apart, right? So I had this sense that something had to hold. So I said, "Well, when what holds?" And he said, "When your will and mine become one." And all of a sudden I realized he was waiting for my complete surrender, even though all along he'd been bringing me there in trust. And so I began, when I said the Our Father, I began to say, "Thy will be done." I completely surrendered my life in a deeper way than I ever had it. Your will, whatever's your will, you want me to die, I would say yes. If you want me to live, I say yes. And whatever you want me to do, I say yes. And I just surrendered my will. And then within like 2 or 3 weeks, I had this surgery, life-changing surgery. And all of a sudden, I'm in a different world. I wake up and I'm in a different world. No more pain, no more hope. And so, he was bringing me there gradually, through.
Oh, so beautiful.
It's so good.
Intense, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of intense.
I wrote
Good,
down
that's-
something you said because I was like, that was so good. I like need to remember it because you talked about trusting the Lord in three ways. You said like trust that He loves you, trust that He will never abandon you, trust that He has your best interest. And I feel like, you know, there's so much that from what you're saying, I think God is just kind of, I'm sure for all of us and maybe hopefully people listening is sort of speaking into my own life in so many ways. And I feel like those three things are the three lies that are so hard to not believe. You know what I mean? When you're in a situation that you don't, like yours, like you just don't know what's going to happen. You really like you feel like it's so unfair. So like, how could someone who loves me like let this happen? You know, those are the 3 points of attack. I feel like so it's such a powerful truth to declare those things and to experience trust, because I think, and you also said that, you know, you asked the Lord, like, what does it mean? Like, what does that mean? What does it mean that I trust you? And my question sort of just is, how do you live in the tension between proclaiming that truth and believing it, but also dealing with the attack of not really believing it? You know, like there's the part of you that's like swimming in storms and you're like, this doesn't feel true at all.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess that's where the suffering purifies us, because we have to come back over and over to tell ourselves over and over, but He said, I can trust Him. And you tell yourself over and over, but He said He's working for my best interest. And so you begin to, whenever you are spiraling down, you bring yourself back to those truths. And as you do that each time, you're deepening your faith, you're deepening your trust, and which allows Him to work, because He needs faith. We see in the Gospels, Jesus needed the faith of the people to work. And so He's going to bring us in our suffering to a place of faith, really great faith in Him, so He can do what He wants to do. I mean, the Lord could have just healed me in an instant. There are miracles that are instant, right? And we all kind of like those ones because we don't have to suffer. And you wonder, like, how come that person got in heaven and me? But what you know, He taught me after reflecting was that, like, when we suffer, if we suffer with faith, we're also being we're becoming a kind of aware of the suffering Jesus. He's bringing us to experience who He is as the suffering Jesus. Like, we know Him as the resurrected Jesus, and we love that because it's so happy and joyful and hopeful. But He's also He was a suffering Lord, and He suffers today in the body of Christ. He suffers today with rejection in the world in so many ways. And suffering in our bodies unites us to Him in a way that nothing else can. We get to know Him in His suffering side. And like, I remember one day I was in the 90s pounds. I was really thin and bony, and I would wear baggier clothes so I wouldn't look so thin. And I felt like everyone would look at me when I was walking out in the stores. And if I went to buy clothing, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I was so afraid to see myself because I could see all my bones. And I was sitting in the church one day, and our parish has a huge crucifix hanging over the altar, like huge. And there was Jesus on this crucifix, bony and just hanging on the crucifix. And I felt that He was, helping me to realize that I'm identifying myself with Him in a way that nothing else has ever made me identify. And one day I was praying, and this is what He said to me. He says, I know what it is to wait. I hung 3 hours on the cross under the weight of human sin. My child, I am with you in your suffering and your waiting. Cling to me because I am near. Do not look downward, but gaze upward to heaven's help. And these words helped me to embrace my suffering, to embrace the fact that he was helping me to live the presence of Jesus, the suffering Jesus, in a way that you just don't unless you suffer. And not to say that it's, God wants us all to suffer. It's just we're all going to have suffering in our life at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can take it as a time to draw close to the suffering Jesus, it's just another perspective of who he is, that we get to meet him in that suffering presence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. I think one thing that comes to mind for me, and thank you for sharing all of these things. I feel like I'm hoping that this is going to be meaningful for people listening. It's definitely meaningful for me. Even here, I'm your daughter. I was with you guys through all of this, and but hearing it again and all of these, I'm just like, yeah, there's a lot even that I haven't heard about all this, so it's really powerful for me. But something that I think stuck out to me was, you're saying in those moments where the lies are coming, or when you're feeling hopeless and feeling despair, just to refocus on trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
That's the only way. And I think that's true. But I think when I hear that, I know that for myself, I have moments where I can't do that, where I kind of drown, I spiral, and I'm stuck, and I'm acting out of that place, or speaking, or whatever I'm doing. It's out of this place of kind of despair. And I'm wondering if that's, were there times where it wasn't possible, like where you just couldn't sort of pull yourself up to trust, and what did you do then, or how did?
Yeah, it's a good question, Nicole, because in the beginning, I think that when I had that part about the cross, that was a couple of years in. And like in the beginning, when I was experiencing suffering, even I felt like one time I was praying my rosary, I felt like Mary said, remember that the cross doesn't have the last word, the glory does. And that helped me to see, okay, so this is just for a time. And, something good will come out of this after. And I needed those little moments to get me through, because and I needed someone to tell me. I guess I needed, to pick it up through prayer, or sometimes it was through my kids or through Louis, someone to give me those words of hope, and that, this is just for a time, kind of thing. And then you don't, the lie is that this is forever. It's never going to change.
I think that like everyone does go through suffering in all kinds of ways, and I'll call it the voyage, or the trip to God, is a lifelong project. Where sure, some events might spur it forward in terms of our trust in God, because in the end, we're going to have to trust God if we want that spiritual growth, and what will cause our trust in God to grow. And so that's a whole other area, another topic. But if we focus too much on the here and now, in other words, if our perspective is too earthly, I guess I'll call it, we're going to struggle more. And of course, we slip into that easily, right? Because it's so easy to happen. And then it's the challenge of knowing I have to keep my eternal perspective, and know that I'm going someplace, and this is not going nowhere. It's going somewhere. I don't come out the other end of this where I was before. I'm higher in my relationship and trust in God. It's going somewhere.
That is like sitting very powerfully with me, because I'm just thinking, I think one of the struggles of wading through anything, honestly, wading, like the experience that you have had is harrowing in so many ways, but there's just even sometimes frustration in waiting in simple things, like you're waiting, like impatience kind of happens to us in life in degrees, and even in the smallest degree, sometimes it catches us that we're waiting for something, and I feel like what you just said just struck me, because it's like waiting feels so passive, or just like pointless, right? Like because you're not sure what the outcome's going to be, you don't know what's going to happen. It feels like you're just not going anywhere. That it does feel like that you're not going anywhere. But what you said is true. That's not the case. You're not going anywhere.
You're going somewhere.
And the waiting itself is the journey, is part of that going. And I think even that just is something that and you, I mean, you can hear it in Mary, so much of what you're saying, like you were on a journey, you weren't stuck. Now obviously we can look at it that way in the
Right.
moment. It doesn't feel like that at all. But it's so good to know, to have that, just even that thought that, okay, I might feel stuck, but I'm not necessarily sitting still and moving.
Yeah. It's like the train image that you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
It's like if you know, okay, so we're on a train, that's the reality. God is bringing us somewhere. But if our window is closed and we're just focused on what's happening, we don't even know that we're moving, you know? And we can just be like, look, I'm just in this small room and I'm just sitting here waiting and I don't know what I'm waiting for and I don't even know where I'm going, you know? And so sometimes it's a thing of, okay, to look out the window and see you're going, you know? And then sometimes I think what also stuck out to me is, and what I remember too is that, you know, that other people sometimes have to be like, hey, like look out the window, you know, we're going somewhere, like to those reminders of hope. And I, you know, I can remember times where I was feeling really down about, you know, about you being sick, Mom, and either like dad or one of my siblings would just be like, let's just, you know, let's keep being hopeful. Or there were moments, Mom, I remember when you were just kind of at a low point and you were having trouble to feel hopeful. You know, I know you, yeah, and then I would have this feeling of like, no, actually, I let's keep being hopeful here. Like, and I would have that, I don't know, experience of hope and be able to share that. So it's like all of our kind of highs and lows, we were able to balance that out. You know, I think that's the experience of suffering in community, you know.
Community.
Well, that's a really powerful thing you say, Nicole, because I honestly think, you know, my family, and even you know the phone calls I got from my parents and my siblings and my own immediate family, like, and friends who prayed, and friends who didn't forget me, you know, through the whole 4 years they continued to, you know, inquire after me, and like all of that was part of it. Like I needed that, and I yes, the Lord helped me. He helped me in my prayer times. He helped me in my own faith life, but it went along with all the support I got from everybody. Like I was carried by so many things, and I feel now that I want to reach out to people, like if my friends are going through hard times, you know.
I think that's exactly what you're doing now. Like it's so powerful, because I'm thinking of like the person, like, Lord, whoever needs to hear this right now, like whoever is on the train and can't look out the window and can't see the journey and can't see what's happening, like to hear from somebody who has like been through like just a significant suffering, you know, and faced all of these things, is so good to hear. Like there is another side. There is like the Lord is doing something. And reminds me too of I forget who it was. I was talking to somebody the other day about this, like the idea of the tapestry, right? Like that the Lord is weaving this beautiful tapestry with something. But when you look at the back of a tapestry, it is the most ugly, disorganized, crazy thing. You would never be able to intuit the artistic beauty that is on the other side. But then when you see it on the other side, it is like even greater than our wildest expectations, you know?
Beautiful. And you know, I want to just, can I share a couple stories of when I was in the hospital?
Oh, yeah.
I want to say these because I want to say that we, like you say, the tapestry, we don't see what's going on behind looks messy, right? But the Lord is at work. And I want to say that when we suffer, the Lord is at work. And when I was in the hospital, those few times, some amazing things happened. One night I was with a roommate. Most of the time I had women, but I guess they got overcrowded, and sometimes they come in and say, "Is it okay if we bring a man in?" I go, "Yeah, okay." So anyway, I had this elderly man, and he was very sweet, but we would have conversations. He came in, he was robust, listening to his radio every day. He had some bowel issues, and so we got into conversation because I felt like I still wanted to bring Jesus to whoever, in whatever way I could too, because I've always had a heart for evangelization. So we got into conversations, and we were talking about faith, and he could not understand how we have a personal God, a God who loves us like a father, like a daddy, a loving daddy. For him, religion was going about and doing the duty of the week, you know, going to church, you know. And we had very intense discussions about that. But anyway, around the third week that he was in my room, because I was in for a long time at that point, he started to go downhill really fast, and he was having terrible night terrors, and anyway, the one night he woke up. He was having these night terrors, and the nurse came in, and he had a lot of trouble, and she was cleaning him up, and she was trying to reassure him, and I leaned over to him, and I said to him, Gord, I said, you have to know, he had just woken up from this before he called the nurse, and I said, Jesus wants you to know that he loves you, and he's forgiven you all your sins.
Did he express some of those sins?
So he was in his sleep, he was calling out for God to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
He was struggling. I could tell, and it dawned on me, oh my goodness, this is a spiritual battle going on. You could see he was wrestling in his sleep. He was crying out, calling out to God, forgive him. Then he was crying in his sleep. Mm-hmm. And finally he woke up, and so I leaned over and I said these words to him, and he became very peaceful. And I kind of got peaceful again, and I began saying my Chaplet of Divine Mercy for him, because I'd heard that when you say it for somebody who might be dying, and I thought at the moment, I think he's maybe dying, getting ready, and this is his last moments of battle. And so I began praying, and we both fell asleep, and then I woke up, and I went to the washroom about an hour and a half later, walked by his bed, and I looked over at him, and I realized he had died. And I went over and I touched him, and he felt just kind of coolish. He wasn't breathing.
Wow.
And so I called the nurse, and she came in and verified that he had just died. And I thought, wow, like all this time we had been having discussions of faith. I had an opportunity to reassure him that Jesus loved him, that he forgave him. I prayed the Divine Mercy for him, which may have given him the graces he needed for that final step into eternal life. And I thought, at that point, okay, Lord, like if you need me here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for you. I'm here, And
that's so beautiful.
Is there time for one more story?
Yeah, sure.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will mind.
Yeah.
So I was in the hospital, and there was a young woman who was very, very thin and just really suffering. And so we got into conversation, and she liked the way I spoke about faith. She says, can I hear more? Can you come to my room and tell me more? So I said, sure, I'll come to your room every day, and I'll tell you all about what is salvation? What did God do with bringing us Jesus? And so every day I'd go to her room and tell her a little bit more, and she began to become so open. I prayed with her to come to know Jesus, and she one morning she came running into my room, and she was so excited. She felt like she knew Jesus, and she was really excited. So we continued, and then one day I was walking down the hall, and she was crying, and I said, what's wrong? And she said her nose tube had come out, and it was coming out so many times, so painful to put back in. Mm-hmm. So I prayed with her. I had a friend with me. We prayed with her that it should be peaceful and it would go back in easily. Anyway, she came back, and she about an hour later I saw her, and her eyes were just like full of life, and all the hardness that had ever been on her face, this seriousness, fallen away. And she says, I saw him. And I said, who'd you see? And she says, when you were praying with me, Jesus came and he knelt down in front of me, and he told me he loved me the way I am, and that I didn't have to prove myself to him. And he wanted me to know his love, something like that. And I was like, wow. And she was like so excited. She started telling all the nurses, all the doctors.
That's awesome.
Anyone who would listen. she began to tell. Jesus came to her, and she was so convinced and convicted of this. My own priest who happened to be in the hospital that day came and saw me, and she came into the room and she says, "Do you know what? Do you know who I saw?" And she started telling him the whole story.
That's so great.
And so anyway, like things like this were going on, praying with people in the hospital. Like Jesus was showing me He's at work. Like this isn't just like a bad thing that I'm in the hospital. He's using this and doing something, meeting people where I would never have gone into the hospital and prayed with people, but I could do it because I was a patient. I was a fellow patient. You know?
And they can't kick you out for that, you know?
It's like your undercover mission, but you actually have to become the whatever, whatever the role is.
Yeah.
You know?
And then we came in and we would pray with like
all kinds of people,
different
nurses,
people,
doctors. We prayed with all kinds
other
of people.
patients, and
Goodness.
Nicole came out with the violin a couple times.
Nicole played violin.
Gather a crowd.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
So the Lord was
my
at work
goodness.
in a time of darkness. The light was shining, and I think He really wants us to know that when there's darkness, if He's invited, His light will come, and He's there in the darkness. So He walks with us.
Oh,
That's so beautiful.
so good.
I had makeup on before we started this episode.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, I'm really glad that I don't wear makeup ever in my life because that.
I'm okay.
Oh, man. We might have to put like a disclaimer before on the podcast. Please remove eye makeup before listening.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good. Oh, well, thank you guys so much for sharing. Even in some of the conversations leading up to this when I was just chatting with you guys, I know that it's a lot to revisit some of these things because they're painful. So thank you for being willing to to share all of that.
Can I say one thing about healing? I know you're just
No, you know
Sure.
what? I was like, I really wanted to hear what you had to say about healing. So that's perfect.
Oh, there you go.
I just feel like I can't leave this because I think this might be helpful for people. Afterwards, I discovered, even though my life had started moving in a good direction, I had a lot of anxiety when I would go by the hospital. I would just be overcome within about 2 blocks of the hospital. I would just feel this anxiousness coming upon me. And I was like, what is this? Like, I go near my doctor's office, anxiousness, So I said to the Lord one day in prayer, I said, Jesus, like every time I go near the hospital or my doctor, I feel this anxiousness. He said, every time you feel any of these negative feelings, He says, come to me and ask me what is the lie. And then ask me what is the truth. So I began, and when I back by the hospital again one time, and I said, okay, Lord, happening again, right on the spot, I said, Jesus, like, what is the lie I'm believing right now? And He said, you think that you were abandoned, that everything was out of control, that nobody cared. I go, yeah, that's right. And then He says, okay, ask me the truth. So I said, but what's the truth? And He says, I was in control. I was with you. You were never abandoned by me. I was in control and leading you through this whole thing. And after that, it was an amazing sense of calm came over me. And when I realized, when I started to go by that hospital in the future again, I had no more anxiety. It was gone. And the same thing, anytime I'd go through these, I'd ask Him the lie and the truth. And the healing came, like healing from, I was told after it was post-traumatic stress, really, like anything that triggered, right? So I offer that to any listeners who have any triggers that bring fear and anxiety. Ask the Lord, what is the lie I'm believing? And wait and listen to what He says. And then ask Him, Jesus, what is the truth? And allow Him to speak to you. Because then those words of healing come, those words of truth bring healing. And then you're set free. The enemy can't hold you down again. So I just wanted to offer that. It was very powerful for me.
Yeah,
So
that's really great.
Yeah.
That's really great. It's so practical too.
Yes,
Thank you for that.
totally. Yeah.
Like that's what I feel like sometimes when I, in my own kind of, and I think this is for me the question that I kind of asked earlier, of like, okay, what about when you're stuck, and the anxieties or whatever. I feel like this is such a great little tool. Okay, what's the lie? God, help me to know what's the lie I'm believing. Because then you unmask what's actually going on, or you allow God to do that. So I think thank you for that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Okay, everybody.
God wink time.
God wink time.
Oh yeah.
Sweet. I mean, I can share first because I was going to share something that was totally different than this. But then when you were talking about the hospital and being with the people, I was like, oh no, this for me definitely was a God wink this week, because I'm doing practical stuff like applying for EI sick benefits and whatever. So so my fibromyalgia brain, I had applied for benefits and then I put the correct street number, but I put the totally wrong street name from some place that I haven't lived for the last 12 years. So I don't even know it. Anyway, so I had to call Service Canada and so the woman that I was talking to, she was like, yeah, this is a weird thing. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's fibromyalgia, my brain. She's like, I have that too. I'm like, really? So then we started having this conversation about fibromyalgia. And then I was able to tell her, well, actually, there's this program that I'm in at, this hospital thing, this Payne University. She's like, that sounds amazing. Can you give me the information for that? I'm going to talk to my doctor and get a referral. And, which was so beautiful. I was like, I'm so glad that we were able to talk today, And then she was able to, in turn, she gave me some tips. She's like, okay, when you're filling out your report, do this, this will help you, whatever, which I was really grateful for, because when I did it, I was like, man, I'm glad I talked to her first. Yeah. It was just one of those moments that I'm like, oh Lord, of all the people that I talked to, hopefully this will be an amazing help for her. And she was so helpful. Thank you for, just intervening in that thing, for goodness. And so that was definitely a God wink for me.
Your story reminds me of this story. I work for the federal government with the weather, and I probably have heard this in the news that there's the new pay system they used starting in 2016 struggled for a number of years, and I ended up losing money and stuff, and had to argue my case, and I saved information and so on. Last summer, I was making my efforts to fix the problem, and I spoke to a young man. I phoned the Phoenix system, and he's a nice young man, and he says, well, what kind of work? And I told him I'm a meteorologist. He goes, you're a meteorologist? I said, yeah. He says, I love meteorology. I said, wow, good. He says, but he says, I want to do that. What? I said, well, so I asked him, about his education and so on. And I gave him the information. He was all hyped, I was so glad to speak to me. And then I told my money problem, and he gave me a quick answer. And I says, I'm not sure that's the best. Is there some way you can check out, really dig into this? And I gave him the information. He says, you bet, I'll check it out. And he says, can you wait on the phone? I said, sure. He goes, maybe, I don't know, it was 5-10 minutes. He comes back. You were right. He says, we fixed it. He says, ever since it cleaned up my pay. So I kind of felt it was a little God moment there.
Totally.
Yeah. God is very mutually beneficial, when you pour yourself out in some way, he's blesses you at the same time. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I can do my God wink next. It's just my haircut. I got my haircut. I got my haircut. Guys, it's literally, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's been a year since I got my haircut, and because I can let my hair grow out long, and it doesn't look that ratty.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, so I went to get my hair cut with my mom, so it's kind of nice mom time, and the girl who was cutting my hair, she's basically cut almost all the women's hair in my family right now, because we just all love her. It was like hanging out with a friend. She was so awesome, and we have very parallel lives. She's the youngest, the same age as my sister, and her sister's mine. So we just talk about the Raptors. It was great.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it was just one of those simple things that I was like, thank you, Lord, because this week was all about paper writing for me. I mean, this whole month is going to be all essays and assignments and papers. So it was really nice.
Just a moment of rest.
That's great.
That's lovely.
Yeah. Well, that kind of segues well into my God wink, I think, from the week. I was also involved in doing a lot of paper writing this week, and still after we record this, I'm gonna go keep writing. But But I had one group project that I was working on. There was a manuscript that was due for this journal, and we've been working hard on it, but we all have all these other stuff, so trying to balance it all. And it got to the end of the week, and we just realized, gosh, like we're not ready, but we have to submit it. And just feeling really stressed about all the work we still have to do and how we're going to get this done. Anyways, and during the week, I've come to this place where sometimes I'm like, okay, I will do as much as I possibly can, but if my body won't let me, like if I reach a point where I just can't, then I'm not going to push myself beyond that, because I used to do that all the time, and that hasn't been healthy for me. So I was trying to do that this week, and anyways, Friday morning, one of the girls just Googles this journal, this project extension, and lo and behold, up and comes a thing of, oh, this project is extended for anyone who's submitting until January 4th.
Oh my goodness.
And so instead of having 2 more days, we have like a couple more months.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Which was great, and it was one of the things like, okay, good. It's okay that I listen to my body. It's like then I get these extensions. This is great, and this happens a lot too. So I don't want to, I want to keep working hard, but I'm also kind of like, okay, great, So that's mine from this week.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Mine is just that I get to talk to my little grandson, 2-year-old grandson, over my FaceTime, and he really just gives me so much life, just having this relationship with this cute little person in my life. So very grateful to God.
It's true.
I love it. Those smiles when they see you over FaceTime, and then the smile that they get on their face is like the most affirming thing I think a human being could ever get. It's like a smiling response from a toddler,
It's so true. It's so true. I'm here. I'm visiting. So my nephew this weekend, so I'm in the room, and actually they're moving, so I have this is why I'll if you're on Zoom or on YouTube, this is how I have my mic set up. I've got the mic sitting in a roll of toilet paper because I forgot the mic stand. Anyways,
very innovative though.
Really, it works,
Yeah.
But it's the cutest thing. Every time I go to the washroom, he stands at the door and goes, Nen, waiting for me to come out so we can continue to play, because that is why I am here. And it's the best thing.
That's the purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Seriously.
Thank you for letting us share, you guys.
It's a blessing.
You know what? I know we have to wrap up, but I feel like Erin and I got a chance to hang out before she went to Ottawa, which was so lovely. And we were talking about the kinds of conversations, we really want to have on this podcast. And I feel like this is exactly that, because there is a kind of vulnerability and suffering that we all experience that I feel like there's like not stigma, but we just don't know how to approach that vulnerability in ourselves, and we don't know how to approach others who are dealing with it. And it feels like you're so alone. And so I just think it's so powerful to hear that kind of sharing, that really, that you were vulnerable at that time, you're vulnerable now, and sharing that with us. And it's really precious, and it's so powerful. So thank you. Really, really thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Well, to all of our listeners, it's good to be with you guys too.
Good. It was wonderful.
We'll see you, or you'll hear us next week, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening.
God
bless.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.